Hi, and welcome back to the English Talk community. I'm Julia, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. If you're someone who understands English pretty well but still struggles to speak fluently, you're definitely not alone. And this episode is just for you. Every week, we talk about the real challenges that English learners face and how to move past them in a way that's practical, simple, and encouraging. Whether you're listening from Sao Paulo, Berlin, Jakarta, or Cairo, this is your space to grow, make mistakes, and finally start using your English in real conversations. This podcast is designed for people like you, learners from all over the world, who want to stop just studying and start speaking without fear or pressure. I know how frustrating it can feel when you've put in the time. You understand so much, but the words still don't come out when you need them. Today we're diving into a story that I think will speak to you in a deep way, because it's something I've heard over and over again from students just like you. Let me ask you something. Why do some people study English for years, sometimes 5, 10, even 15 years, and still freeze when it's time to speak? They memorize vocabulary lists, watch videos, finish grammar books, pass written tests, even understand movies without subtitles. But the moment they have to open their mouths, their minds go blank. No words come out. Their confidence disappears. It's like all their knowledge suddenly vanishes. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you understood everything the other person said, but still couldn't respond naturally? If you have, you're definitely not alone. This is something I hear all the time from English learners around the world. They say, "Julia, I can read, I can write, I can even listen and understand, but when I have to speak, I feel like I've forgotten everything I know." It doesn't matter where you're from, Paris, Mumbai, Seoul, Cape Town, New York, or Istanbul, this problem shows up everywhere. People feel stuck in their heads. They know the words, they know the rules, but they can't speak with flow or ease. And they start to think maybe they're not good at languages. Maybe it's too late for them. Maybe they just don't have the talent for speaking. But I want to challenge that idea today. You see, the real reason people fail to speak fluently isn't a lack of knowledge. It's not about grammar, it's not about vocabulary, and it's definitely not about talent. It's about the way they've been practicing, the way they've been taught, and more importantly, the way they think about fluency. I've worked with hundreds of students over the years, and I can tell you, the ones who finally break through and start speaking naturally are not the ones who memorize the most or study the longest. They're the ones who shift their mindset. They're the ones who realize that fluency is not about perfection, it's about communication. It's about connection. It's about being okay with making mistakes and speaking anyway. And that's exactly what today's episode is about. I want to tell you the story of someone who lived this experience deeply. Her name is Sofia. She was one of my students a few years ago, and when I first met her, she was stuck. Completely stuck. She had studied English for more than 10 years. She had a degree in international business, had traveled across Europe, and even attended professional seminars in English. But she couldn't speak in real conversations. If someone asked her a question, she would panic. Her heart would race, she would smile, nod, and try to escape the conversation as fast as possible. And she thought something was wrong with her. But the truth is, there was nothing wrong with her at all. What she needed wasn't more studying. What she needed was a new approach. And that's what changed everything for her. Today, Sofia speaks confidently with clients and colleagues from all over the world. She participates in meetings in English, travels comfortably, and even helps other learners who are struggling the way she once did. And the way she got there wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was a clear, consistent shift in how she practiced, how she saw herself as a speaker, and how she allowed herself to communicate, even with imperfections. That's why I believe this story is so important, because Sofia is not unique in her struggle, but she is proof that things can change. Her journey is something I want you to hear because it breaks the myth that you need more grammar or more words to speak fluently. It shows that what you really need is a change in focus, from learning more to using what you already know, from thinking too much to speaking more, from fearing mistakes to using them as part of the process. And I know that some of you listening right now are in the exact same place Sofia was. Maybe you've done everything you were told to do. You followed the traditional methods. You studied hard. You watched English videos, read articles, maybe even took online courses. But still, when it's time to have a real conversation, your brain seems to stop working. And you wonder, why is this so hard for me? I want you to know that it's not just you. And I want to help you understand why this happens and what you can do differently starting today. So let's take a closer look at what really holds people back when it comes to speaking English fluently. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of effort. It's not intelligence. One of the biggest reasons is fear. The fear of making mistakes. The fear of sounding silly. The fear of being judged. This fear creates tension. And when you're tense, your brain has a harder time accessing what you already know. You go blank not because you forgot, but because your brain is in panic mode. And this is where so many learners stay stuck for years. Not because they don't know enough, but because they don't feel safe enough to use what they know. Now imagine what would happen if you let go of that fear. Imagine speaking without needing every sentence to be perfect. Imagine allowing yourself to make mistakes, laugh at them, and keep going. What would that feel like? What would change for you if you stopped trying to sound perfect and started focusing on just making the message clear? That's what made the difference for Sofia. She stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be real. She gave herself permission to be a beginner in conversation, even after years of study. And that shift opened the door to real progress, because fluency isn't something you magically get one day. It's something you build step by step, conversation by conversation. You don't wake up fluent. You become fluent by practicing in a way that helps you speak, not just understand. And that's where most traditional methods fall short. They teach you how to recognize words, how to complete exercises, how to pass tests, but they rarely teach you how to speak naturally, how to express your thoughts, how to feel comfortable using the language in real life. That's the gap we're here to close. So if you've been frustrated, if you've ever asked yourself, why can't I speak, even though I've studied for years? I want you to really listen today. Because Sofia's story is more than just inspiring. It's practical. It's full of lessons you can apply to your own life. It's about someone who was exactly where you are now and found a way to move forward. And if she could do it, you can too. If you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, that sounds exactly like me, I want to say something directly to you. If you understand English, you watch series and YouTube videos without subtitles, you read articles, maybe even think in English sometimes, but when it comes to speaking, you freeze or feel blocked, then this podcast was made with you in mind. This space is not about judgment, pressure, or pretending to be perfect. It's about being real with the experience of learning English, especially when it doesn't go the way you expected. And if that speaks to you, then I want to invite you to be part of this community with us. You're not alone in this. That feeling of knowing so much but being unable to use it when you need it is one of the most common challenges I hear from learners all around the world. People who live in Tokyo, Rome, Buenos Aires, or Lagos, they all write to me saying the same thing. I can understand, but I just can't speak. And the truth is, there is nothing wrong with you. You don't need to learn more before you're allowed to speak. You don't need to wait until you feel 100% confident. You just need the right kind of support, the right kind of space, and a way of practicing that actually helps you use your English, not just study it. So, if what we're talking about makes sense to you, if it feels like we're describing your experience, take a moment right now to follow this podcast. Hit that subscribe button and leave a like or review depending on the platform you're using. It might seem like a small action, but it's actually powerful. Why? Because it tells your brain, this matters. I'm committed. I'm doing something different now. That one simple gesture creates a shift. It's you choosing to be part of a group of learners who are done feeling stuck and ready to take real steps toward fluency. Not by studying more, but by practicing better. By thinking differently. By doing things that actually lead to speaking. And here's another reason to subscribe. This podcast is not just information. It's a path. Each episode is a step forward. We use real stories, real struggles, and practical ways to move past the fear and hesitation that hold most people back. If you're tired of starting and stopping, if you've told yourself 100 times that you'll try again next month, but nothing changes, then let this be the moment you do something different. Join us. This isn't just a podcast. It's a growing community of people from every part of the world who are committed to speaking English with more confidence, even if they make mistakes, even if they still have a lot to learn. I know how isolating it can feel when everyone around you seems to speak better than you, or when you're the only one in the room who feels nervous about opening your mouth. But I want you to remember something. Fluency is not about comparing yourself to others. It's about making progress in your own way. And progress doesn't happen by waiting to feel ready. It happens by deciding to take small actions, today, now, in this moment. Subscribing is one of those actions. Liking this episode is another. These are small signals you send to yourself. I'm in. I'm not going to keep doing this alone. I'm choosing a better way. And I also want you to know, when you support this podcast by subscribing and sharing it, you're helping other learners too. There are so many people out there who feel exactly the way you do. They feel stuck, ashamed, or just exhausted from trying so hard with no results. When you like this episode, when you leave a review, when you send it to a friend, you're spreading something that can make a real difference. You're helping someone else find a new perspective, just like you're finding yours right now. So if you feel a connection with what we've talked about so far, and if something in you is saying, yes, this is the kind of support I've been needing, then don't overthink it. Just take that next step. Subscribe. Like the episode. Follow the show on your favorite platform, not because I'm asking you to, but because your future self will thank you for it. The one who finally feels comfortable speaking. The one who joins conversations without fear. The one who no longer says, I understand, but I can't speak. But instead says, I'm not perfect, but I'm speaking now. And that's what matters. When you take this small action, you're not just consuming content. You're stepping into a space where transformation is possible. You're surrounding yourself with messages that lift you up instead of making you feel like you're not enough. That's what the English Talk community is all about. And when you subscribe, you make that message stronger, for yourself and for others. So if you're ready to move forward, if you want to keep learning in a way that finally feels human and achievable, this is your chance. Be part of something that supports your growth and reminds you that fluency is not a destination. It's a journey. And you don't have to walk it alone anymore. You know, before we get into today's story, I want to take a moment to talk about something I think we all share as human beings. Something so simple, but so powerful. That feeling of not knowing. Of trying something new and suddenly feeling very small, very unsure, like we're standing on shaky ground. It doesn't matter where you're from, what language you speak, or how old you are. We've all been there. That moment when you're doing something unfamiliar, and your brain just fills with doubts. Am I doing this right? Do I sound strange? What if people laugh at me? It's such a human experience, and it shows up all the time when we're learning a new language. I remember once trying to learn how to dance salsa in a community center in Madrid. I was excited at first, ready to move and have fun. But the moment the music started, and the instructor said, "Let's go," I froze. I suddenly felt like everyone was watching me. My feet didn't move the way they should, my timing was off, and I felt completely out of place. I laughed it off, but deep down I felt embarrassed. And it made me think, this must be how so many people feel when they try to speak English for the first time. It's not about the language itself, it's about how vulnerable we feel when we're exposed, when our skills are still growing and we can't hide behind a confidence. And you know what's funny? That feeling doesn't go away just because you've studied hard or practiced a lot. Even advanced learners tell me that they still hesitate before joining a conversation, or they second-guess themselves even after they've spoken. It's not just about knowledge. It's about the emotional side of learning, how we relate to ourselves when we make mistakes, when we feel behind, or when we think we're not enough. That's what I want to bring into today's episode. Not just tips or strategies, but the real emotional journey of someone who has been there. Because here's the truth. When we talk about learning English, we often focus so much on grammar rules or vocabulary lists that we forget we're human. We forget that learning a language is also learning to deal with discomfort, with the fear of judgment, with the pressure to be perfect. And that pressure, it can stop people from speaking at all. I've met learners from Paris, Mumbai, Seoul, and São Paulo who are brilliant in their understanding but terrified of saying something wrong. And I always tell them, you don't need to sound perfect to be heard. You just need to start speaking. So, before we continue, I want you to take a breath with me. Just one slow breath. Let yourself be here, in this moment. Let go of the expectation to get everything right. This is not a classroom where someone is correcting you at every turn. This is your space to explore, to reflect, to grow. And if you've ever felt nervous or small or not good enough while trying to speak English, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone. We've all had those moments. Moments where we stayed quiet even though we wanted to speak. Moments when we replayed a sentence in our minds, wondering if we made a mistake. Moments when we compared ourselves to others and decided we weren't ready. These moments are not signs that you're failing. They are signs that you're learning. Real learning doesn't happen in perfect conditions. It happens when you keep showing up even when it's messy, even when you feel unsure. That's why today's story matters so much. Because it's not about someone who had it all figured out. It's about someone who struggled, really struggled, with speaking English, despite years of studying. It's about someone who faced the fear, the hesitation, and the silence. Someone who, like you and me, had doubts and insecurities but decided to keep going. And what changed her life wasn't a textbook or a grammar app. It was something much deeper. It was understanding how to work with her mind, her habits, and her confidence. But before we dive into her story, I want you to remember one thing. Every person who speaks fluently today, every teacher, every podcast host, every language coach, was once a beginner. Every one of us had a first conversation where nothing came out right. We all had a first phone call where we misunderstood everything. We all had a moment where we thought, maybe I'm just not good at this. But we didn't stop. We kept going. And that's the only real difference between someone who speaks and someone who stays silent. One kept moving forward, even when it felt awkward. So if you're here, if you're listening, if you've made it to this part of the episode, I want you to know something from the bottom of my heart. You're doing better than you think. You're in the right place. And everything you felt along the way, every hesitation, every mistake, every moment of silence is part of the process. You're not failing. You're learning. You're growing. And that deserves to be acknowledged. Learning a new language is one of the most courageous things anyone can do. It's not just about words. It's about stepping into a new version of yourself. One that can express, connect, and belong in a whole new way. And yes, that can feel uncomfortable at times. But it's also beautiful, because every time you try, even if it's imperfect, you're building a bridge between you and the rest of the world. And that's something powerful. So let's stay in this moment together. No pressure, no rush. Just a conversation between us. A safe place to be real, to feel seen, and to remember that you're part of something bigger. A global community of learners, just like you, who are finding their voices one sentence at a time. That's why this podcast exists. And that's why I'm so happy you're here with me today. Let me introduce you to someone very special. Her name is Sofia. She's from Milan, Italy, and she's been part of our podcast community for quite some time. If you've ever felt stuck in your English journey, I have a feeling you'll connect with her story in a deep, personal way. Sofia is one of those people who, from the outside, looks like she has everything under control. She's smart, organized, and deeply passionate about learning. Ever since she was a teenager, she dreamed of traveling the world, working internationally, and connecting with people from different cultures. And for her, English was the key to unlocking all of that. She started learning English at school, just like many of us. She did her homework, passed her exams, and even took extra language courses during the summer. She followed all the rules. Teachers praised her for having a large vocabulary and great listening skills. On paper, she was doing everything right. But every time she had to speak, really speak, her confidence would disappear. It didn't matter how well she knew the words. When it was time to use them in a real conversation, she would freeze. Her mind would go blank. Her hands would get cold. And instead of saying what she was thinking, she would stay quiet. For years, Sofia thought the problem was with her. She believed something was missing inside her, some natural talent or special ability that other people seemed to have. She looked at her classmates, and later her colleagues, and wondered how they could talk so easily while she felt stuck. Even When she moved to London for a 6-month internship, she kept avoiding conversations. She would rehearse what to say before asking for help at work. She avoided small talk in the kitchen, and every time she made a mistake or couldn't find the right word, she would feel embarrassed for hours afterward. She told me that during that time, she started to feel like English was a mirror reflecting all her insecurities. It wasn't just about speaking. It was about being seen and the fear of being judged, of saying something wrong and looking foolish became bigger than her desire to communicate. That fear started to hold her back. She avoided networking events, turned down invitations to social gatherings, and even changed her career goals. She began to think that maybe fluent English just wasn't meant for her. But here's the part of her story that I find so powerful. Sofia didn't give up. Even though she felt frustrated and overwhelmed, she kept searching for answers. She stopped looking for the next grammar rule or vocabulary list. Instead, she started asking deeper questions. Questions like, why am I so afraid to speak? And what if the way I've been learning is the problem, not me? That change in mindset was the beginning of something new. She told me she found this podcast during one of those low moments, when she felt lost and unsure of what to try next. She was listening while walking home from work, headphones in, rain falling lightly on the streets of London. And she heard something that made her stop in her tracks. It was a simple message I had shared in an old episode. Fluency doesn't come from perfection. It comes from connection. Those words hit her differently. For the first time, she realized that maybe the pressure she was putting on herself was the real obstacle. Maybe fluency wasn't about getting every word right. Maybe it was about allowing herself to make mistakes, to speak with courage instead of fear. That moment planted a seed. Sofia began to change how she approached English. She made a decision. She was going to speak, even if it was messy. She started small. First with voice messages to friends, then by ordering her coffee in English without overthinking it. She practiced thinking in English during her daily commute, describing what she saw on the street or how she felt that day. She created simple routines that made English part of her real life, not just something she studied. Most importantly, she stopped judging herself. She told me she created a little mantra. Mistakes mean I'm growing. And every time she stumbled, she reminded herself of that. She joined online speaking groups, started using English in meetings, and even began sharing her learning journey on social media. Slowly but surely, her confidence grew. And what's amazing is that her fluency followed that confidence, not the other way around. Today, Sofia speaks English with a clarity and ease that would surprise the younger version of herself. But she'll be the first to tell you that the real transformation wasn't just in her language skills, it was in how she saw herself. She no longer believes that fluency is a talent some people are born with. She knows it's something that's built day by day through patience, practice, and self-compassion. Sofia's story is not just inspiring, it's real. It's a reminder that the journey to fluency is not always a straight line. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes it feels impossible. But it's always worth it. And if you've ever doubted yourself or thought you were the only one struggling, I hope you can see a little bit of your own story in hers. Because the truth is, many of us are walking the same path, just at different stages. What makes Sofia's story so powerful isn't that she became fluent. It's that she didn't let fear decide her future. She chose to keep going, even when it was uncomfortable. She found her voice not by being perfect, but by being brave. And that, to me, is what this journey is really about. Finding the courage to show up, to speak up, and to believe that your voice matters, no matter where you're from or how many mistakes you make along the way. When Sofia first started learning English, she was full of excitement. Like many people, she imagined herself speaking fluently, watching movies without subtitles, traveling with confidence, and even working in an international environment. But it didn't take long before that excitement turned into frustration. She studied hard and memorized vocabulary. She followed all the lessons and grammar explanations, but something was always missing. The more she learned, the more pressure she felt to get things right. And that pressure started turning into fear. She told me that one of her biggest obstacles was the constant fear of making mistakes. Even in situations where she understood every word, her mouth refused to cooperate. It was like her brain would freeze as soon as someone expected her to respond. She had the knowledge, but it never translated into speech. When people spoke to her in English, she would panic, trying to remember the rules, the correct expressions, and the right pronunciation. Her mind would race, and by the time she came up with a sentence, the moment had passed. The conversation had already moved on. What made it worse was the fear of being judged. She wasn't just afraid of making mistakes. She was afraid of looking foolish, of being seen as someone who didn't belong. That fear made her hyper-aware of every little thing she said. If she pronounced something wrong or used a word in the wrong context, she would think about it for hours afterward. She imagined people laughing behind her back or rolling their eyes. Even though no one ever actually said anything negative, her inner critic was loud, and that inner voice convinced her that silence was safer than speaking and getting it wrong. Sofia described one experience at a cafe that really stuck with her. She was in a rush one morning in London on her way to work, and she needed to order coffee. She had rehearsed the sentence in her head. "Hi, can I have a cappuccino, please?" It was a simple phrase, one she had practiced before. But when it was her turn in line, the person at the counter smiled and asked, "What can I get you today?" The unexpected question threw her off completely. Her heart started racing, and she blanked. She stumbled over her words. Her voice came out shaky, and she quickly pointed at the menu instead. As she walked out, coffee in hand, she felt defeated. It wasn't the mistake that hurt. It was the feeling that she had failed at something so simple. These moments piled up. Every interaction felt like a test. And each mistake felt like proof that she wasn't good enough. She started avoiding situations where she might have to speak. She avoided making phone calls. She would smile and nod during conversations. And she stayed silent in meetings, even when she had something to contribute. Her understanding of English was actually quite strong. She could follow conversations, read articles, and even watch movies. But speaking, that felt impossible. This experience is more common than most people think. So many learners find themselves in the same position. They can read and write, they understand English in their heads, but when it's time to speak, nothing comes out. And then they start to believe that they're not ready, that they need to study more, that they need to reach a certain level before they can have real conversations. But here's the truth. That moment of feeling ready doesn't come from knowing more words. It comes from building confidence and practicing speaking, even when it's uncomfortable. Sofia's story shows this in a powerful way. She was more prepared than she realized, but fear was holding her back. She felt like she needed permission to speak, like she had to earn the right to have conversations. She kept thinking, "I'll start speaking when I'm fluent," not realizing that fluency actually begins with speaking, even if it's slow, even if it's full of mistakes. The biggest lie she believed was that everyone else had it figured out, and she was the only one struggling. But once she started sharing her experience with others, she discovered just how many people felt exactly the same. And that's something I want every listener to hear. If you understand English but still feel stuck when it's time to speak, you are not alone. You're not broken, and you're not behind. The fear of judgment is something almost all language learners go through. The pressure to speak perfectly, the anxiety of being misunderstood, the shame of not knowing the right word, all of that is part of the process. And the people you think are fluent and confident, many of them have been through the same journey. They just kept going. In Sofia's case, that fear even started to affect how she saw herself. She began to think that maybe she just wasn't someone who could be fluent. Maybe she didn't have the right kind of brain for languages. Maybe she was too old or too shy or just not meant for this. These thoughts became limiting beliefs, and they shaped the way she approached learning. Instead of celebrating progress, she focused on what she couldn't do yet. And over time, that focus made her feel smaller, less capable. I remember her telling me that she sometimes felt invisible in group settings. People would speak English around her, and she would just smile and nod, pretending to follow along. She would leave those conversations feeling defeated, even though deep down she had so much to say. She had opinions, ideas, stories, but the fear kept her silent. And with every missed opportunity to speak, the fear grew stronger. What's powerful about Sofia's story is not just the difficulty she faced, but the honesty with which she shared it. She didn't hide her struggle. She didn't try to pretend she had it all together. She let herself be vulnerable, and that vulnerability became the foundation for her growth. She realized that being honest about her fears didn't make her weak, it made her human. And from that place, she began to rebuild her relationship with English, not as a subject to master, but as a skill to practice. So many of us carry these quiet fears when learning a new language. We tell ourselves that we're not ready, that we're not good enough, that we'll start speaking when we're better. But the truth is, speaking is what makes us better. It's through the messy, imperfect attempts that we gain fluency. It's through the mistakes that we learn what works and what doesn't. And it's through practice, real, consistent, sometimes awkward practice, that confidence is built. Sofia's early obstacles were real, and they were tough, but they weren't the end of her story. They were the beginning of her transformation. I still remember the day Sofia told me about the shift that changed everything for her. It wasn't during a class or while reading a book. It was during a moment of quiet frustration. She was sitting alone after another day, where she had stayed silent during an English conversation. She had understood every word. She had even formed responses in her mind. But once again, she didn't speak. That silence hit her hard. Not because it was the first time it had happened, but because it had become her pattern. And in that moment, she asked herself a simple question. What am I really waiting for? It was that question that opened the door to something bigger. She realized that she had been waiting for a version of herself that didn't exist yet. A version of herself who spoke with perfect grammar, flawless pronunciation, and unlimited confidence. She had built this imaginary milestone in her mind. The idea that one day she would feel ready. But that day had never come. And what hit her the most was that it might never come if she kept doing what she had always done, waiting. That's when she started thinking differently about fluency. She had always believed fluency was the result of perfection, that the fewer mistakes she made, the more fluent she would become. But what if it wasn't like that? What if fluency was not a result, but a process? What if speaking, even with mistakes, was the very thing that built fluency? That shift in mindset changed everything for her. She went from thinking, I'll speak when I'm fluent, to I'll become fluent by speaking. It sounds so simple, but for Sofia, it was revolutionary. Up until that moment, she had avoided conversations because she didn't want to feel embarrassed. She didn't want people to notice her accent or to point out her grammar mistakes. But when she let go of that fear, even just a little, she opened a door. She realized that every time she avoided speaking, she was postponing her progress. And every time she tried, even if it didn't go perfectly, she was getting stronger. The very next day, she made a decision. She was going to speak at least once a day in English. It didn't matter if it was a full conversation or just a short exchange. She just needed to use her voice. The first time, it was a simple, "Good morning" to a colleague at work. Then, she forced herself to ask a question during a team meeting. It wasn't smooth. She stumbled over her words and her voice shook a little. But when she finished, no one laughed. No one criticized her. In fact, one of her colleagues smiled and responded kindly. And that moment felt like a tiny victory. From there, she kept going. She didn't wait for the perfect sentence. Instead, she used the words she had, even if they weren't exactly right. She stopped overthinking her grammar and started focusing on connection. She listened to how native speakers expressed themselves and borrowed phrases. She started using shorter, simpler sentences so she wouldn't freeze in the middle of speaking. And every time she did, every small attempt, she felt a little more confident. She told me something that stuck with me. I stopped trying to be perfect, and I started trying to be understood. That mindset helped her in so many ways. It took away the pressure of being flawless. It allowed her to make space for mistakes without shame. And ironically, the less pressure she put on herself, the more natural her English became. Because she wasn't paralyzed by fear anymore. She was present in the conversation. One thing she started doing was recording short voice messages to friends in English. This gave her a safe space to practice speaking without the pressure of live conversation. At first, she would rehearse what she wanted to say several times, but over time, she just spoke naturally, like she would in her native language. Sometimes she listened back to the recordings. Sometimes she didn't. The point wasn't to analyze every mistake, but to normalize the sound of her own voice speaking English. Another turning point was when she joined a small online group of learners from different countries. They met once a week just to talk in English. There were people from Barcelona, Mumbai, Tokyo, São Paulo, and Johannesburg, all with different accents, all at different levels. It was beautiful to see how they supported one another. And what made the biggest difference wasn't the corrections or the feedback. It was the freedom to speak without judgment. Everyone was learning. Everyone was making mistakes. And that sense of community helped her relax and let go of the idea that she had to earn her place in the conversation. I asked her once what helped her push through those moments when fear started creeping back in. She said it was remembering her why. She had always wanted to travel, to make international friends, to be part of global conversations. And now, every time she spoke, even imperfectly, she was living that dream in real time. It reminded her that fluency was not about sounding like, someone else. It was about expressing herself, as she was, with the tools she had. And that was more than enough. It didn't mean she never made mistakes. In fact, she still made plenty. But her relationship with those mistakes changed. Instead of seeing them as failures, she started seeing them as signs of growth. If she wasn't making mistakes, it meant she wasn't challenging herself. So every time she stumbled, every time she had to search for the right word, she saw it as part of the path, not a detour from it. The moment Sofia stopped chasing perfection and started embracing practice, she unlocked a part of herself that had been stuck for years. She was no longer waiting for the ideal moment. She was living the moment. She was building fluency from the inside out, not just through knowledge, but through action. That's something I've seen in so many learners. When you shift your mindset, even just a little, the entire experience of learning a language changes. You stop fearing your voice, and you start using it. You stop judging your progress, and you start celebrating it. Sofia's story is powerful because it shows what's possible when you let go of the pressure to be perfect. Her journey reminds us that fluency isn't something you wake up with one day. It's something you build, word by word, moment by moment. And most of the time, the only thing standing in the way is the belief that you're not ready. But you are, just like Sofia was. And once she believed that, everything changed. One of the biggest barriers I see among English learners is the idea that you have to be perfect before you can speak confidently. So many people tell me, "Julia, I don't speak because I'm afraid I'll make mistakes," or "I want to learn all the grammar rules before I talk." I completely understand where this comes from. We've been taught to value accuracy, to study grammar books, and to memorize vocabulary, hoping that someday we will be ready to speak flawlessly. But here's the truth. Fluency is not about knowing every rule or having a perfect accent. It's about being able to communicate your thoughts clearly and consistently, even if you make mistakes along the way. When you hold on to the idea that you must be perfect, it becomes a huge obstacle. You wait, hesitate, and avoid speaking because you fear being judged or misunderstood. This perfection mindset can create a silent prison where you feel stuck. I want to remind you that this is normal, and it's something I hear from learners all around the world. Whether you are in Paris, Tokyo, or São Paulo, the fear of making mistakes is very real. But here's the key. Mistakes are not the enemy. They are part of the learning process. The sooner you accept that, the faster you will improve. Fluency is a journey, not a destination. It's about using English to express yourself, to connect with others, and to share your ideas. It's about speaking enough so that your brain gets used to forming sentences in real time. It's about training your mouth, your ears, and your mind to work together smoothly. And none of that requires perfection. What it requires is practice, consistency, and patience. I want to share a story about a learner named Daniel from Berlin. He was obsessed with grammar. Every time he wanted to say something, he would silently check if his sentence was correct. He told me that this habit made conversations exhausting and unnatural. Daniel felt like he was trapped in his own head and that his words were frozen before they even reached his lips. One day, he decided to stop worrying about correctness and focus on sharing his ideas instead. He joined a local conversation club and promised himself to speak without self-censorship. At first, it was hard. He made plenty of mistakes. But after a few weeks, he noticed something amazing. People understood him, and they even appreciated his efforts. his confidence grew, and so did his ability to speak more freely. Daniel's experience shows that fluency grows when you let go of perfection and embrace communication. Another important point is that fluency doesn't mean speaking like a native. I often remind my listeners that native speakers also make mistakes, use slang, or pause to find the right word. Fluency means being able to express yourself clearly enough that people can understand you and engage with what you're saying. It means your message gets across, not that you sound exactly like someone from London, New York, or Sydney. When you release the pressure to sound perfect, you free yourself to focus on what really matters: connection and understanding. This shift in perspective can also reduce anxiety. When you stop obsessing over grammar and pronunciation, speaking becomes less intimidating. You start to enjoy conversations more because you're not constantly worried about errors. Instead, you're focused on listening, responding, and sharing. This natural flow is what builds real fluency. I often tell my listeners to think about fluency like riding a bike. When you first learn, you wobble, you fall, and you make mistakes. But the important thing is to keep pedaling, not to wait until you feel perfectly balanced. Over time, your muscles remember the movements, and riding becomes effortless. Speaking English is just like that. The more you practice speaking, even with mistakes, the more automatic it becomes. Sometimes learners feel embarrassed about their accents or pronunciation. I want you to know that accents are part of your identity, and they don't prevent you from being understood. Many English speakers around the world have accents, and communication is not about losing your identity, but about sharing it in a new way. The goal is not to erase who you are, but to add English as another tool to express yourself. If you find yourself stuck in the cycle of perfectionism, try this simple exercise. During your next conversation or practice session, focus on saying just one idea clearly. Don't worry about grammar or pronunciation. Your goal is to get your message across, even if it's simple. You might be surprised at how liberating this feels and how much you learn from that experience. Remember, every successful English speaker was once a beginner who made mistakes. The difference is that they kept speaking, kept trying, and didn't wait to be perfect. You can do the same. Fluency comes from doing, not from waiting. When you give yourself permission to be imperfect, you open the door to growth and real communication. So today, let go of the idea that you must know everything before you speak. Instead, focus on being brave enough to use the English you already know. Speak often, speak simply, and speak with purpose. This mindset will help you break free from hesitation and move forward on your language journey. I hope this encourages you to stop waiting for perfection and start embracing progress. Your voice matters, your ideas matter, and your willingness to speak is what will take you to the next level. Keep going. You're closer than you think. When I think about Sofia's journey, one of the most powerful changes came when she discovered the importance of deliberate practice. Before, Sofia would spend hours studying grammar books, memorizing vocabulary lists, and watching English videos passively, but she rarely spoke. She was stuck in a cycle of understanding but not producing. Then everything shifted when she started to focus on daily, intentional speaking. Practice, even if it was just for 5 minutes each day. At first, it was not about having perfect conversations or complex discussions. Sofia began by talking to herself out loud, repeating simple sentences, practicing phrases she knew, and describing things around her. She would say things like, "Today is sunny," or "I am cooking dinner," just to get used to producing sounds and forming sentences spontaneously. This simple daily habit helped her break the mental block of silence that had held her back for years. Sofia also found creative ways to integrate English speaking into her daily routine. For example, while walking her dog in the park of Milan, she would narrate what she saw or what she planned to do next in English. She didn't worry about grammar or pronunciation mistakes. Her focus was on consistent use of the language. This small but steady exposure to speaking built her confidence and made the language more familiar and comfortable in real-life situations. One thing Sofia shared with me was how helpful it was to set small, achievable goals. Instead of aiming to speak perfectly or hold long conversations, she set a goal to speak in English for 5 minutes daily, no matter what. Sometimes it was a monologue, sometimes practicing dialogues with online language exchange partners, or repeating lines from her favorite English movies. The key was that every day she made speaking a priority. This deliberate, consistent effort helped her brain rewire itself to think and express in English more naturally. Sofia's practice wasn't just about quantity, but quality too. She paid attention to areas she struggled with and deliberately focused on them during her 5-minute sessions. For example, if she found it hard to say certain sounds, she would spend time repeating those sounds clearly. If she had difficulty with some expressions, she would look for simple alternatives and practice them until she felt more comfortable. This focused effort made her progress much faster than before because she was not just speaking randomly, but practicing with a clear purpose. I often remind my listeners that deliberate practice is different from casual practice. It means speaking with intention, focusing on specific skills, and pushing yourself slightly outside your comfort zone. It's like exercising a muscle. You don't just move it lightly, you challenge it in the right way to get stronger. Sofia's story shows that even short, consistent, focused practice can create huge improvements in fluency. Another thing Sofia did was to track her progress. She would record her 5-minute speaking sessions every few days and listen back to notice improvements and areas for growth. This self-reflection motivated her and helped her adjust her practice to be more effective. Sometimes she would notice how much clearer her pronunciation had become, or how much easier it was to form sentences without hesitation. This sense of progress kept her motivated to keep going. Sofia's deliberate speaking practice also helped her deal with the fear of making mistakes. By speaking daily in a low-pressure environment, she got used to the feeling of not being perfect and realized that mistakes are natural and nothing to fear. This mindset shift was crucial because it allowed her to participate more actively in real conversations without hesitation. I want to emphasize that deliberate practice doesn't require long hours or expensive courses. It's about making speaking a regular habit and focusing on meaningful, targeted practice. Even 5 minutes a day can create dramatic changes over time. Consistency beats intensity when it comes to language learning. Sofia's experience also teaches us that speaking practice should be enjoyable and integrated into daily life. Whether you're describing your morning coffee, talking about the weather, or sharing your thoughts on a book, the important thing is to speak regularly and with intention. This creates a strong foundation for fluency that passive study alone cannot build. So if you feel stuck or frustrated with your speaking skills, think about how you can add deliberate speaking practice to your routine. Start small, be consistent, and focus on the areas where you need the most improvement. This habit will help your brain adapt to speaking English more naturally and give you the confidence to use your skills in real conversations. Remember, fluency grows when you speak frequently, deliberately, and with purpose. Sofia's story is a great example of how small daily steps can lead to big breakthroughs in a short time. Don't underestimate the power of simple, focused speaking practice. It can change everything. One of the most important things I want to share with you today, inspired by Sofia's story, is how you can start applying practical speaking exercises in your daily life right now. These are simple, doable tips that anyone can follow, no matter where you live or how busy your schedule is. The key is to make speaking English a natural part of your day without feeling overwhelmed or pressured to be perfect. First, try talking to yourself in English when you are alone at home. This might feel a little strange at first, but it's a fantastic way to practice speaking without fear of judgment. You can describe what you are doing, think out loud, or even tell yourself stories. For example, if you are cooking dinner, say things like, "I am chopping vegetables," or "The soup smells delicious today." It doesn't have to be complicated. The goal is to get used to forming sentences and hearing yourself speak English. This habit helps your brain connect words and ideas in real time and builds your confidence gradually. Another practical tip is to describe your daily activities or surroundings in English as you go about your day. When you wake up, you might say, "I am getting ready for the day," or while you are walking, you can narrate what you see. "There are many people at the park today," or "The sky is very blue." These simple sentences don't require memorization because you are talking about what is happening right in front of you. This technique helps you practice vocabulary related to everyday life and trains your mind to think in English naturally. Joining online communities or language exchange groups can also be very helpful. Nowadays, there are many free platforms where you can connect with other English learners or native speakers. You don't have to be fluent to participate. Even simple interactions, like greeting someone or answering basic questions, make a big difference. You can use apps or websites to find conversation partners and practice speaking in a friendly, supportive environment. The social aspect of these groups also motivates you to keep practicing regularly and shows you that everyone struggles sometimes. Small daily dialogues are another effective way to practice. You can create or find short conversations on topics that interest you, like ordering food, talking about the weather, or discussing your hobbies. Practice these dialogues out loud by yourself or with a partner, focusing on clarity rather than perfection. For example, a simple dialogue might be, "What are you doing today?" "I'm going to the supermarket." "That sounds good. Do you need anything?" "Yes, I need some apples and bread." Practicing these everyday conversations helps you prepare for real-life situations and reduces anxiety when speaking with others. It also builds your confidence to respond quickly without overthinking. Another idea is to use a voice recorder or your phone to record yourself speaking in English every day for a few minutes. Pick a topic or describe your day and listen back to notice your strengths and areas for improvement. This practice encourages self-awareness and lets you track your progress over time. Don't worry if you hear mistakes. That's part of learning. Celebrate your progress instead of focusing only on errors. If you enjoy reading or watching videos in English, try summarizing what you read or watched out loud. For example, after reading a short article or watching a video, explain the main ideas in your own words. This activity combines comprehension and speaking skills and makes learning more interactive and fun. Using sticky notes around your house is another practical trick. Write down simple English phrases or words related to objects or actions and place them on items like your fridge, mirror, or computer. Every time you see a note, say the phrase out loud and try to make a sentence with it. This constant exposure reinforces vocabulary and encourages spontaneous speaking. If you have friends or family members who also want to learn English, try practicing together regularly. You can set up short, informal conversations, play language games, or quiz each other on vocabulary. Learning with others creates a supportive environment and makes the process enjoyable. Even if you have limited time, the most important thing is consistency. It's better to practice speaking for 5 minutes every day than to do one long session once a week. Small, regular habits build up to big improvements and keep your motivation alive. Remember, the goal is to speak often, even if your sentences are simple and your pronunciation is not perfect yet. Every word you say aloud is a step toward fluency. Don't be afraid to make mistakes or sound awkward. That's how you learn and improve. Sofia's story teaches us that practical daily use of English in small doses can dramatically change your ability to speak confidently. Start with what feels comfortable and gradually challenge yourself with longer sentences or more complex topics. The important thing is to create a positive routine where speaking English becomes a natural part of your daily life. This approach makes learning less stressful and much more enjoyable. So, take a moment now to think about how you can add one or two of these tips to your day. Whether it's talking to yourself while cooking, joining an online conversation group, or practicing a short dialogue before bed, find what works for you and make it a habit. This simple shift in your daily routine can accelerate your speaking skills more than you might expect. With these practical strategies, speaking English becomes less of a challenge and more of a fun, regular activity. You'll notice your confidence growing and your thoughts becoming clearer in English. The path to fluency is paved with small, consistent actions just like these. One of the biggest challenges I've seen, not just in Sofia's story but in so many English learners around the world, is the fear of making mistakes. This fear is very real and very common. It's that feeling that when you speak, you might sound silly, or people might judge you because of your accent, your grammar, or simply because you are not perfect. I want to be honest with you. This fear can stop you from speaking. Altogether, it builds a wall between what you know and what you can say out loud. But here's the thing. Making mistakes is not only natural, it's essential for learning. I want to help you understand how to change your relationship with mistakes so they become your allies instead of obstacles. Let me start by sharing something I often remind myself and my students. Nobody expects you to be perfect. When you speak another language, the most important thing is the message you want to share, not the small errors that might happen along the way. The moment you shift your focus from, "I must speak perfectly," to I want to communicate my ideas, you unlock a new level of freedom. When you care more about the message than the mistake, you start speaking more naturally and confidently. This simple mindset shift is powerful, but it takes practice to really believe it. A helpful technique I often suggest is to prepare yourself mentally before speaking. Remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes. Even native speakers sometimes stumble over words or say something wrong. It's part of being human. When you accept that mistakes are normal, you reduce the pressure you feel. Think about it this way. If you were to meet a friend who is learning your native language and makes mistakes, you wouldn't judge them harshly. You would appreciate their effort and help them feel comfortable. So why not offer yourself the same kindness and understanding? Another practical tip is to focus on one message per sentence or conversation. Instead of trying to say complex ideas perfectly, keep your sentences simple and clear. This way, you reduce the chance of errors and increase your chances of being understood. For example, if you want to talk about your weekend, say, I went to the park. It was sunny. I met a friend. These short sentences might feel basic, but they build your confidence and fluency over time. You'll find that simple language can be very effective and that it's better to speak simply than not speak at all. When you do make a mistake, try to see it as a learning opportunity. Instead of feeling embarrassed, think, what can I learn from this? How can I improve next time? If you are in a conversation and someone corrects you, thank them and use that correction to grow. It can be hard at first, especially if you are shy, but over time, this openness to feedback becomes one of your greatest tools for improvement. The key is to separate your self-worth from your language skills. Making mistakes does not mean you are less smart or capable. It simply means you are learning. Sometimes, fear of speaking comes from comparing yourself to others. You might see fluent speakers or those who learned English early and feel discouraged. Remember, everyone's learning path is unique, and what you see on the surface doesn't show the struggles or time spent behind the scenes. Focus on your own progress, no matter how small it feels. Celebrate each time you speak. No matter the result, because every attempt is a step forward. A technique I recommend is practicing positive self-talk. When you feel nervous or scared about speaking, remind yourself of your goals and strengths. Say to yourself, I am improving every day, or it's okay to make mistakes. I'm learning. This kind of encouragement boosts your confidence and reduces anxiety. You can even write these affirmations down and read them before practicing English or before conversations. If the fear of making mistakes feels overwhelming, try starting with low-pressure situations. Talk to yourself in the mirror, record short videos, or practice with friends or tutors who are patient and supportive. The more you practice speaking in safe environments, the easier it becomes to speak with strangers or in more formal settings. Building confidence step by step is the best approach. Another tip is to prepare topics or phrases in advance for conversations you expect to have. This preparation reduces anxiety because you know what you want to say and how to say it. However, don't try to memorize everything word for word, as this can make you nervous if the conversation doesn't follow your script. Instead, use your preparation as a guide to boost your confidence while staying flexible. Remember that fluency is a journey, not a destination. There will always be new words to learn and new ways to improve. The most important thing is to keep moving forward, even if that means speaking imperfectly. Each time you push through your fear and speak, you build a stronger foundation. Over time, your brain rewires itself, and speaking English becomes easier and more natural. So next time you feel afraid to speak or worried about making mistakes, take a deep breath and remind yourself that the goal is to communicate, not to be perfect. Focus on your message and let go of the fear. The more you practice, the more you will see that mistakes are simply part of your learning process. Are not alone in this. Many others have felt the same way, and just like Sofia, you can overcome these fears and speak English with confidence. The secret is to keep trying, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Creating an environment that supports your English speaking practice is one of the most important steps you can take on your journey to fluency. I always tell my listeners and students that language learning doesn't happen in isolation. It happens best when your surroundings encourage you to speak, make mistakes, and keep trying without fear. You want to build a positive atmosphere around your English, one that inspires you to open your mouth and use the language confidently every day. Let me share some ideas that can help you create this kind of environment, based on what I've seen work for many learners, including Sofia's story. First, start by choosing content that truly motivates you. This might sound simple, but it's a game changer. When you engage with movies, podcasts, books, or videos that interest you, your brain becomes more eager to understand and use English. If you love cooking, find cooking shows or recipes in English. If you're passionate about sports, follow sports commentary or read articles about your favorite teams in English. The key is to pick topics you care about so that your learning feels natural and enjoyable, not a boring task. When you're excited about the content, you'll want to talk about it, even if it's just to yourself at first, and that leads to more practice. Next, try to surround yourself with people who are patient and supportive. Speaking with people who encourage you rather than judge you is crucial. Maybe you have friends or coworkers who speak English or are also learning. These can be great practice partners. If not, look for online communities or language exchange groups where learners and native speakers meet to practice. The internet is full of forums, Facebook groups, and apps, where you can join voice chats or text conversations without pressure. These safe spaces allow you to experiment with your English without the fear of being corrected harshly or laughed at. In fact, when you find people who understand your struggles and cheer for your progress, it makes you want to keep going. I also recommend using language learning apps that focus on speaking and communication, not just grammar drills or vocabulary lists. Some apps have speech recognition technology and let you practice speaking phrases or sentences aloud, giving you immediate feedback. Others connect you to tutors or conversation partners worldwide. Using technology like this is a great way to create a personal, judgment-free environment for practice anytime, anywhere. The important thing is to keep your practice consistent, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes daily. Small habits add up, and having tools you enjoy using will keep you motivated. Another tip is to make your physical space inviting. For English practice, you can label objects around your home with their English names, leave sticky notes with common phrases on your mirror or desk, or keep a notebook handy to write down new words or sentences you want to try saying. When English becomes part of your everyday environment, it's easier to remember and use it. Some people even like to speak to themselves in English while doing daily routines like cooking, cleaning, or walking. It might feel strange at first, but this kind of self-talk builds confidence and makes speaking English more natural. Don't forget to set small, achievable goals that focus on speaking. For example, decide to say one sentence out loud every day about your plans or feelings, or call a friend and try to have a short conversation in English. These small challenges can boost your confidence and create positive momentum. Celebrate your efforts no matter how small they seem. Each time you practice speaking, you reinforce your ability and bring yourself closer to fluency. In some cases, you might feel stuck because your environment is full of distractions or stress. If that happens, try to carve out specific times and quiet places for your English practice. Even just 10 minutes in a calm space can make a big difference. You can listen to an English podcast, repeat phrases out loud, or read a short paragraph and summarize it verbally. The key is to create moments when your mind is focused and your energy is directed towards speaking. Also, be mindful of your mental environment. Sometimes we create internal barriers that stop us from speaking. Negative thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," or "I'll never be fluent," can hold you back. Instead, practice kindness toward yourself. Remind yourself that learning a language is a process that takes time, and every step forward counts. When you build a positive mindset alongside a supportive external environment, you set yourself up for success. Finally, I want you to think about your ideal English-speaking environment. Picture what it looks like, who is around you, what activities you are doing, and how you feel while speaking. Use this mental image as motivation to make changes in your real life. Maybe you want to join an English-speaking club, sign up for a conversation class, or find an online tutor. Take small steps toward building that environment every day. Remember, the environment you create is like the soil where your English skills will grow. Rich, supportive, and motivating soil helps your speaking skills bloom faster and stronger. If you take the time to build a positive environment, you'll notice that speaking English becomes less scary and more enjoyable. Your confidence will increase and your progress will accelerate naturally. So start today by choosing motivating content, finding patient conversation partners, using helpful apps, and making your space a friendly place for English. Your future self will thank you for it. Fluency in English doesn't happen overnight, And it certainly isn't built by occasional bursts of study or practice. One of the most important lessons I've learned and want to share with you is that consistency beats intensity every single time. It's not about spending hours a day cramming grammar rules or memorizing long lists of vocabulary all at once. Instead, fluency grows steadily when you practice a little bit every day, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes. This daily effort creates a habit, and habits shape the way your brain learns and remembers. When you show up regularly for yourself and your English learning, your brain starts to absorb the language naturally, and your confidence increases with each small step. I know it can be tempting to think that if you just study hard once a week for a long time, you'll catch up quickly. But in reality, long sessions with gaps of several days in between don't have the same impact. Our brains need frequent, repeated exposure to new information to transfer it from short-term memory into long-term memory. That's why even brief, focused practice each day helps your brain hold on to what you've learned and build your ability to use it actively. Imagine it like watering a plant. You wouldn't flood it once and then forget it for a week. You'd give it a little water every day so it can grow strong and healthy. Your English skills need that same steady care. When I first started learning English, I used to try studying for hours during the weekend because I didn't have much time on weekdays. But I quickly noticed that after a few days without practice, I was forgetting much of what I studied. It felt like I was going backward instead of forward. Later, I switched to practicing a little every day, listening to a short podcast, repeating simple sentences out loud, or writing down new words. And I saw a big difference. My progress became smoother, and I felt more comfortable speaking because I was constantly refreshing and using what I'd learned. This consistency also helps reduce the pressure to be perfect in any single session. When you know you will practice again tomorrow and the day after, it's easier to accept mistakes and imperfections in today's practice. You can focus on improving gradually rather than trying to get it right all at once. This mindset removes the fear of failure and encourages you to keep speaking, which is the real key to fluency. So, by showing up daily, even with small efforts, you're building momentum and confidence without overwhelming yourself. One practical way to stay consistent is to set a specific time and place for your English practice. This could be a few minutes right after waking up, during your lunch break, or just before bed. When you build English into your daily routine, it becomes a habit, something you do automatically rather than having to force yourself. It might help to start with tiny goals, like saying one English sentence out loud each day or listening to a short video while commuting. These small actions are easy to fit into your schedule and, over time, add up to significant improvements. Consistency also means being patient and kind to yourself. Progress is not always visible day by day, but trust that your daily efforts are accumulating. Some days you might feel like you're not improving, and that's normal. On those days, remind yourself that the important thing is to keep going. The results will come with time, and every bit of practice strengthens your skills. Remember, fluency is a marathon, not a sprint. Another helpful tip is to vary your practice activities to keep things interesting and cover different skills. For example, one day you might practice speaking by describing your day aloud, the next day listen to an English podcast, and another day read a short article or write a few sentences. This variety keeps your brain engaged and prevents boredom, while the daily habit ensures continuous progress. You can even track your practice with a journal or an app to celebrate your consistency and stay motivated. If you find it challenging to stay consistent, consider joining a group or finding a study partner. Having someone else counting on you can be a powerful motivator to practice regularly. Plus, interacting with others gives you more chances to speak and learn from real conversations. Many language learners tell me that being part of a community helps them stay accountable and excited about their progress. When you focus on consistency over intensity, you're also building resilience. You learn that it's okay to have off days because you know there will be more opportunities to practice. This mindset helps you avoid burnout and keeps your learning sustainable over months and years. Consistency turns English learning into a lifestyle rather than a stressful task. So if you want to improve your fluency, start small and do a little every day. It's better to speak one sentence today and one tomorrow than to do hours of study once in a while and then stop. Trust in the power of daily practice, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you start to see and feel real progress. Your fluency is built step by step, day by day, with consistent, purposeful effort. Keep showing up for yourself, and your English will grow stronger naturally. When I think about Sofia's journey, what stands out the most is how much she changed over the course of just 6 months. At the beginning, she struggled to say simple sentences without feeling nervous or getting stuck. But by sticking with her practice and embracing the idea of speaking imperfectly, she began to notice real progress in her daily life. It wasn't a sudden transformation overnight, but a steady improvement that became clear to everyone around her. One of the first big moments she told me about was during a work meeting. Before, she would often stay quiet or nod along, afraid to speak up in English. But after several months of daily practice, she found herself able to share her ideas clearly and even answer questions with confidence. This was a huge breakthrough for her because work meetings often feel high pressure, and speaking up in another language can be intimidating. Sofia's growing confidence didn't stop at work. She also started to enjoy traveling more because she could finally communicate with locals, ask for directions, order food, and even make small talk with people she met. This gave her a new sense of freedom and independence she hadn't experienced before. It's amazing how the ability to express yourself clearly in a language opens up new worlds and opportunities. What was even more inspiring is that Sofia began to help others who were also learning English. She volunteered to practice with friends, encouraged coworkers, and shared tips from her own experience. Seeing her support others was a clear sign that she had moved from struggling learner to confident speaker. She wasn't just improving for herself. She was becoming part of a community of English learners who lift each other up. Throughout these 6 months, Sofia's progress was gradual, but very visible. Her pronunciation became clearer, her sentences more fluent, and her hesitation less frequent. Each step built on the previous one, showing how consistent effort really pays off. It's important to remember that everyone's pace is different, and what matters is the commitment to keep going. Sofia's story reminds us that improvement doesn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. Small wins add up to big change over time. I think what made Sofia's transformation so real and lasting was her mindset shift. Once she stopped fearing mistakes and started focusing on communicating, her practice became more enjoyable and less stressful. This made it easier for her to stay consistent and motivated, even when progress felt slow. If you're listening and wondering if you can achieve the same kind of results, I want you to remember Sofia's journey. It wasn't magic or talent, but patience, daily effort, and a willingness to speak imperfectly that led her to success. She went from being stuck and frustrated to expressing herself with clarity in important situations. That's a transformation anyone can make with the right approach and mindset. Imagine yourself in Sofia's shoes. The relief of finally being able to say what you mean in a meeting, the joy of connecting with people during travels, and the pride of helping others on the same journey. These are real, achievable results that come from showing up and practicing regularly. One thing I love about Sofia's story is that it breaks the myth that fluency means perfection or needing to know everything before speaking. Her gradual progress shows that fluency is about being able to communicate your ideas clearly and confidently, even if you make mistakes. It's about being understood and participating fully in conversations that matter to you. And that's exactly what Sofia achieved over those months. She didn't wait to be perfect. She just kept practicing and improved step by step. Another important aspect is that Sofia's progress impacted her self-esteem and motivation. As she gained confidence in speaking, she felt more empowered in her daily life. This positive cycle kept pushing her forward. When you believe you can do something, you're more likely to take the steps needed to improve. Sofia's experience shows how learning English can be a powerful tool, not only for communication, but also for personal growth and connection with others. Thinking about Sofia now, it's clear that her hard work paid off in many ways beyond language skills. She became more comfortable in social settings, more proactive at work, and more adventurous when traveling. Her English ability opened doors to new experiences and friendships. And all of this happened because she embraced the process and stayed committed to practicing regularly, even when it was uncomfortable at first. Her story is a great reminder that learning a language is not just about memorizing words or grammar rules, but about building a skill that enriches your life in many ways. If you're on your own English learning journey, I encourage you to take inspiration from Sofia's transformation. Think about the small, consistent actions you can take each day to move forward. Remember that real progress takes time and patience, but with determination and the right mindset, you can achieve clarity and confidence in your speaking too. Every conversation you practice, every sentence you speak aloud, brings you closer to that goal. Sofia's journey shows that your efforts will lead to visible, meaningful change, step by step, day by day. When I think about Sofia's journey and how much she changed over time, it's clear that anyone listening to this podcast can follow in her footsteps. The good news is that you don't need any special talent or perfect conditions to start improving your English. Today, Sofia began with small steps, simple habits that anyone can build into their daily routine. So I want to invite you to take a moment and think about how you can start applying some of these ideas right now. The key is to create a practice habit that fits your life and feels doable. It doesn't have to be complicated or take hours every day. Even just 5 minutes of speaking out loud to yourself or practicing simple sentences can make a big difference over time. What really helped Sofia was focusing on consistency and courage. She decided to practice regularly, even when it was uncomfortable or when she made mistakes. This was a mindset shift that changed everything. You might feel scared or embarrassed to speak English sometimes. That's completely normal. But what matters is that you don't let fear stop you. Instead, remind yourself that making mistakes is part of learning, and every time you speak, you're getting better. If Sofia can do this, you can too. I encourage you to think about your own schedule and find small moments where you can practice English actively. Maybe it's describing what you're doing as you cook or walk, repeating sentences you hear in a podcast, or joining an online community where you can chat with others who are also learning. The important thing is to use English as much as possible, even if it feels awkward at first. When you practice out loud, you train your brain and mouth to work together, which builds your speaking muscles and confidence. Remember, fluency is not about perfection or knowing every word. It's about communicating clearly and confidently in real-life situations. So don't wait to feel ready before you start speaking more. Start today by choosing one practical habit to work on. Maybe it's speaking for 5 minutes every day, or sending a voice message to a friend, or reading a paragraph out loud from your favorite book. These small actions add up and create momentum. Over time, you'll notice that your hesitation decreases, your vocabulary grows, and your ability to express yourself improves. Everyone's journey is unique, and your progress may look different from others. That's okay. The key is to keep moving forward and not give up. Sometimes progress feels slow or invisible, but every effort counts. I want you to feel proud of yourself for showing up each day and practicing, because that is exactly what builds fluency. Think about how Sofia's story shows the power of small, consistent actions, combined with a positive mindset. This combination helped her overcome the biggest obstacles and achieve real results. If you ever feel stuck or frustrated, remember that it's part of the process, and many people feel the same way. The most important thing is to keep trying and to celebrate your small victories along the way. Each time you speak English, you are building your confidence and skills. And as you practice more, speaking will become easier and more natural. So, I encourage you to take Sofia's story as inspiration and commit to your own practice starting today. Find a way to speak English regularly that fits your lifestyle and interests. Be patient with yourself and give yourself permission to make mistakes. Use every opportunity to communicate, and remind yourself that fluency comes from consistent effort over time. You are capable of reaching your goals with courage and persistence. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Our community is here to support you, and together, we can overcome the challenges of learning English and celebrate every success. So take that first step now, speak out loud, and keep moving forward, one day at a time. Your fluency is within reach. I want to take a moment now to invite you to reflect on your own journey with English. Think about the challenges you face when it comes to speaking. Maybe it's fear of making mistakes, lack of confidence, or simply not knowing where to start. Whatever it is, it's important to acknowledge it honestly. Recognizing these feelings is the first step to overcoming them. Now, I want you to imagine a very small goal you can set for yourself today. Something achievable, something that won't overwhelm you. It could be as simple as saying a sentence out loud about your day, repeating a phrase you like, or even just listening carefully to a short conversation and trying to understand the gist. The key is to pick a manageable action that feels doable and then commit to it right now. When you set small goals like this, You create a positive momentum that helps you build confidence gradually. You're not trying to become perfect overnight, but to make steady progress. And the beautiful part is that every small step adds up over time. It's like planting seeds for your future fluency. So, take a moment, write down your goal, or say it out loud to yourself. This simple act of setting an intention makes it more real and increases your chances of following through. I also want to encourage you to share your experiences with our community here at the English Talk community. You can leave a comment, tell us what your small goal is, or share any feelings or victories you have along the way. When we open up and share, we create a supportive environment where everyone can learn and grow together. You might find that others have similar challenges, and by reading their stories, you feel less alone and more motivated. Connection is powerful, and this community is here to help you stay encouraged and inspired. Remember, learning English is a journey with ups and downs. Some days are easier, some days harder, but every effort counts and every attempt to speak or practice moves you closer to your goals. So if you ever feel stuck, come back to this moment. Think about your small goal, remind yourself why you started, and reach out to the community for support. Setting a small goal today is more than just an action. It's a commitment to yourself and your progress. It's saying, I am ready to improve, no matter how small the step. And that mindset is what will carry you forward through challenges. Don't underestimate the power of these little victories. They build confidence, reduce anxiety, and help you enjoy the learning process more. So, take this chance to reflect, set your goal, and share your journey. I'm excited to hear from you and see how you're growing in your English skills. You have the strength to keep going, and I'm here to support you every step of the Taos way. Keep believing in yourself and take that first small step right now. Thank you so much for staying with me today. Before we finish, I want to leave you with a thought that has helped so many learners I've met and worked with over the years. You don't have to be perfect to be fluent. Perfection is not the goal. What truly matters is having the courage to start and to keep going. Sometimes, we wait for the right moment to speak, the right words to come, or the perfect grammar to be ready. But that moment rarely arrives if we don't take the first step. Being brave enough to start, even with mistakes, is what leads to progress. Fluency is not about sounding like a native speaker from day one. It's about communicating your ideas, expressing yourself clearly, and building confidence little by little. Every time you practice, you are moving closer to your goal. Every conversation, every sentence you speak, no matter how simple or imperfect, is a victory. So, celebrate those moments and remind yourself that courage matters more than perfection. Your journey is unique, and every effort counts. I want you to know that here at the English Talk community, you are not alone. We are all learning together, facing similar challenges and cheering each other on. Each episode we share, each tip and story, is designed to help you take one more step forward. Even when progress feels slow, remember that consistency and persistence win the race. Every day you practice, you are shaping your future fluency. I am grateful to have you here listening and being part of this community. Your willingness to keep learning and growing inspires me. Keep believing in yourself. Stay curious and don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are part of the process. Fluency is a journey, and every journey begins with a single step. So be brave enough to take that step today and keep moving forward. Thank you again for joining me on this episode. I'm excited to continue sharing more stories, tips, and encouragement with you. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be courageous enough to begin. Keep practicing, stay positive, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate you being here and joining this conversation about overcoming challenges in speaking English. It means a lot to know that you are committed to your learning journey and are willing to take steps to improve. Remember, every episode we share here at the English Talk community is designed to support you and make your English learning experience practical, enjoyable, and effective. Before you go, I encourage you to explore some of the other episodes available on the podcast. We have plenty of helpful tips, inspiring stories, and simple techniques to boost your English skills. Whether you want to improve your vocabulary, practice pronunciation, or gain more confidence in speaking, you'll find content here that suits your needs. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you never miss an episode that could make a difference for you. And speaking of upcoming episodes, I'm excited to share that our next conversation will focus on how to improve your active listening skills in English. Listening is such a key part of learning a language, and yet it's often overlooked. We'll explore practical ways to train your ears, understand different accents, and really connect with the language as it's spoken in real life. If you've ever felt lost during conversations or found it hard to catch everything, this episode will give you some powerful tools to change that. I hope you'll join me again for that episode and continue to be part of this amazing community where we learn together and support each other. Thank you once again for your time and for being dedicated to your English learning journey. Keep practicing, stay curious, and I look forward to speaking with you soon in the next episode.